28th of July 1942, number 217 Squadron, Royal Air Force, flying the Bristol Beaufort off Malta in the Mediterranean, spots an Axis supply convoy off southern Greece. They are torpedo armed. One aircraft is piloted by Lieutenant Edward Ted Strever, and he selects his target, a 12,000-ton cargo ship sailing in company with 2 destroyers. Strever and his wingman had taken off 3 hours earlier from Luqa airfield on the island of Malta. Strever of the South African Air Force is on secondment to the RAF. Strever's navigator, RAF pilot officer William Dunsmore, guides the aircraft into the attack run. They must fly low and slow, ready to release their torpedo. As the Beauforts drop down to attack, the defending destroyers open up with intense flak. Strever's wingman is hit, his plane crashing into the sea. Strever drops his torpedo, but his engines are hit, but makes it over the ship, his crewmen seeing the torpedo slam home and sink the transport. His aircraft crippled, Strever glides down and crash lands into the sea. Strever, Dunsmore and the other 2 crewmen, Sergeant John Wilkinson of the Royal New Zealand Air Force, the wireless operator, and fellow Kiwi Sergeant Alexander Brown, an air gunner, pile into their rubber dinghy and start paddling towards Greece. At this point, an Italian Cant Z506 seaplane appears overhead, circles them, then lands in the ocean about 100 yards away. The Cant Z506 Erone, or Heron, was a 3-engine floatplane introduced into Italian service in 1936. A maritime reconnaissance plane and bomber, it had a crew of 4. A crewman clambers out of the Italian plane and signals for the downed Allied aircrew to approach. Strever drops over the side of the dinghy and swims over to the enemy seaplane. He is hauled aboard, given a drop of brandy and a cigarette, then the others paddle over and are rescued. The seaplane then taxis into a small harbour on the island of Corfu. Landed as prisoners of war, Strever and his crew are treated well and housed in Italian officers' quarters. Fed a couple of decent meals with red wine, the next day they are informed that they are to be transferred by air to Italy. This is a blow, as they had been planning to escape. Taken back down to the sea, they are loaded back aboard the Cant seaplane that captured them. This time the crew includes a 5th man, a corporal armed with a pistol to guard the prisoners. Talking quietly among themselves, Strever and his crew hatch a hasty plan. They are about to make history. The seaplane lifts off and sets course for Taranto in Italy. At a given signal, the prisoners leap suddenly into action. Sergeant Wilkinson leaps forward and punches the radio operator in the face. He then climbs over his body and flings himself at the armed corporal, wresting his pistol off of him, and passes it back to Strever. Dunsmore and Brown tackle the flight engineer while the pilot tries to draw his pistol and the co-pilot begins fumbling with a submachine gun. Wilkinson advances on the cockpit using the Italian corporal as a human shield, and Strever quickly disarms the pilots at gunpoint. Strever and his crew have just pulled off the world's first air hijacking. Strever jumps into the captain's seat, but he faces serious problems. He's flying an unfamiliar aircraft with no maps and no knowledge of petrol consumption. The Italian co-pilot is bundled back into the cockpit, and Strever points a gun at him and forces him to fly them to Malta. The aircraft turns south. The Italians are terrified, for Malta is heavily defended by RAF fighters. Strever knows this, but it's the closest friendly territory. But as the big seaplane approaches Malta, they are pounced upon by 3 Spitfires of number 603 Squadron. The Spitfires make several firing passes at the lumbering seaplane, bullets smashing through its fuselage and wings. Frantically, Pilot Officer Dunsmore even waved his white vest out of the window to try and stop the attacks, but to no avail. With fuel almost exhausted and the seaplane badly shot up, Strever orders the Italian co-pilot to land on the ocean. Quickly, everybody climbs out onto the wings and waves the Spitfires off. Shortly, an RAF high-speed launch races out to tow the seaplane into Malta. Now that the drama was over, Strever felt a little bad at his rough handling of the Italians after the decent treatment he and his men had received while prisoners themselves. That was until one of the pilots produced a bottle of red wine from among his kit and everyone took a swig. As the Italians said with a shrug, war is war. So to Ted Strever goes the title of world's first aircraft hijacker. He and Pilot Officer Dunsmore received the Distinguished Flying Cross for this escapade, and the two sergeants, Wilkinson and Brown, the Distinguished Flying Medal. Strever died in South Africa in 1997, aged 77. Please subscribe and share, and also help support my channel at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.